So tell me, what have been like a couple of your biggest struggles in this process of self-discovery, but then also trying to practice these new behaviors? Where have you found it most difficult?
So I always say everyone's a work in progress, myself included. When I try to think about the things that I've learned and share the things that I've learned and what's been difficult, it's all difficult. Like you spend most of your life, I feel like in situations that make you uncomfortable and that challenge your sense of self, that challenge your belief system, that challenge the behaviors that you've developed over time. And for me, the hardest thing is remembering and applying the things that I've learned in the moment when they're happening.
Mm,
Because I did used to be very reactive. I used to have a temper that would, and never like violent, like I've never hit anyone in my life. I've been punched in the face, but I didn't do anything back. But I used to kind of get frustrated very quickly and very explosive. And that was kind of again, not to cut the fam. We're all, very close, but like it was at times explosive growing up.
yeah.
Being a teenager, living with my mom and two sisters most of the time, and then, my dad the other times, and all the stuff that we had going on family wise, it was hard. And I actually was talking about my mom about this a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling her, I'm like, I've worked so hard to like be calm
Mm,
after growing up the way that we did, and like I don't ever want to lose that. And there's times where I feel like it starts to slip away when I let go of my self-care regimen, when I don't keep the boundaries that I know are so important to my well-being and the structure that I've spent so many years putting in place to make sure that I'm not like that anymore.
mm.
So I think the consistency is the hardest thing, because if you put all the work in and you get everything where you want it, it's still possible that you let it all go, and that's on you. That's on.
Yeah.
This is not always the most popular thing, but like we're responsible for our own triggers. Like we can't expect other people to adjust because I get angry when someone says this or I'm avoidant when someone does that. Like I have to own that and know how to react and behave in the moment. And that's the hardest thing to do, especially, having come from a different background and having to have learned these skills. I have to keep practicing them or they slip.
Yeah, I mean, and that emotional regulation piece, like you're saying, a lot of us were not taught how to regulate emotions. A lot of us were actually sent away for big emotions, which I work a
Hmm.
lot with my clients on, that crying or tantrums, and that is really culturally what we do. That is, I mean, the timeout for a child. That is what that, sending them away for their big emotions. And so because of
Hmm.
that, we don't learn how to work through them. We just uh, either avoid or we get explosive or whatever that looks like. But it sounds like you figured out some ways that to regulate your nervous system so that maybe in those moments when there is an opportunity for you to be reactive, you're able to choose a different path.
I definitely try. I'm not perfect. It doesn't always work.
Sure.
One thing I want to ask you about that. So this is interesting to me because like one of the ways that I self-regulate is I step away, which is
Mhm.
also feeding into the avoidant attachment style. So
Yeah.
like how do you self preserve in a sense, but then also, respect your partner and your own attachment style so that you can not kind of get like caught up. Because if I'm like
Right.
if I'm in a conversation that's making me uncomfortable or a conflict, I want to leave. But also for me to calm myself and not be reactive, like I need to take a step back.
Yeah, which actually is exactly what I encourage people to do because there's nothing wrong with that. When you are activated in that way, your amygdala, the emotional center of your brain, it it reacts. And so it's the fight or flight response is happening. You probably feel like the discomfort in your stomach, in your chest, in your throat. All of that is your body's being flooded with these biochemicals, with adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, everything you need to protect yourself. And
Mhm.
so for someone especially who you're trying not to be reactive, so you're like, okay, there is a shit ton of chaos going on in my body that I don't know what to do with. So I need to remove myself. That is okay, because that is how, by removing yourself from the threat, you give yourself the opportunity for your prefrontal cortex to come back online, and you can start thinking logically. And you probably notice that when you remove yourself, probably within a few minutes, depending on how big it is, you can feel the hormones and all of the biochemicals dissipating. But the biggest thing goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's having that, it's letting your partner know that you'll be back. But even beyond that, it's sometimes setting these ground rules prior to even going into this. So they know, like, your partner's very aware of, this is what I need. And I can completely relate to that. Like, space is exactly what I need when I'm feeling reactive. So if when I'm in a relationship, that conversation is had, that this is what I need in order to calm down. And so you give them the disclaimer in advance, and then you come back. But the other piece of that is coming back is like not coming back 2 weeks later, right? Coming back, like, there's an established, when you're laying out the ground rules, there's usually an established timeline. Let's come back together in 20 minutes. If we're not ready, we'll at least touch base and then do it again.
Yeah.
But
I learned that too. Yeah. That's another one I will say, like, in the moment, it's very, very hard to regulate yourself to be like, I need a half an hour. And I can think back to one relationship that I had where I went on a half an hour walk, and, like, she was upset. And in retrospect, like, she had every right to be upset. I literally, it's just like, I'm going on a walk. I didn't say for how long. I didn't say anything. And honestly, she was probably like, I don't even know what her attachment style was. I'd have to think about that. That doesn't matter. But I just remember, like, being out there and, like, getting a text like, hey, are you ever coming back? And it had been like 20 minutes. And I was like, I should have just said, I'm going to go for a half-hour walk. I'm going to clear my mind. Let's come back and talk about that. And it probably would have de-escalated the whole situation.
Sure. And that, again, that takes the practice, right? That takes, because yes, that's a big part of the work that I've done, is though I still will get reactive. I've done a lot of work around asking for the timeout, or, like, okay, let's pause this before it is irreparable and come back and do it again. Because that's a huge part of that. When you both are explosive, saying and doing things. I mean, when the toothpaste is out of the tube, that's rough.
Yeah. I think more than anything, what I've learned, and probably more recently, is that the words that I say actually have meaning, whether I'm upset, how I mean them, or how I don't mean them in the moment. And I try to, just in general, and you've seen it a few times here, as I'm trying to, like, find the right words to, like, talk about growing up, but also, like, not diss the family. And, like, listen, all of our families, like, what they did right, they did the best they could. They didn't know any better. And, I think back to that, and I try to, regulate myself, not using filler words, and slowly, carefully choose my words so that I'm talking about how I'm feeling and not projecting something onto someone else. Not always easy. I'm not always successful, but that's the mindset I try to take into it.
Yeah. And that's another great point when it comes to even, like, your intentions. Intentions don't always matter. Like, if what you said was hurtful and screwed up, no matter what you intended, it was still hurtful and screwed up.